Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Robert Eggers' new film, The Northman, starring Alexander Skarsgård, Nicole Kidman, Claes, Ethan Hawke, and of course Anya Taylor-Joy. And this is a movie that I was very excited for. One, because I really love both The Lighthouse and The Witch, and it's two movies that I've always wanted to watch again ever since watching them the first time, but I've honestly only watched all three of these movies now only one time, and I'd love to watch all three again because they are vastly different movies while also holding that same sort of stylistic flair that Robert Eggers has. He has a certain stamp on his films that feels very specific to him, and I absolutely loved this film as well, and I honestly would have a very hard time ranking his three films because I think they're all on a very different but very strong level of cinematic quality. And so this of course is going to be a spoiler review for The Northman, because if you have not seen The Northman, there is a lot to talk about in this film. Surprisingly, I didn't think that there'd be this much stuff that I'd want to talk about in this review, but let's just jump right into this and not waste any more time, starting with just the film in general and some of its themes. And if you don't know what this movie's about, essentially it's about Alexander Skarsgård's character who witnesses his father's murder by his uncle at the beginning of this movie. Ethan Hawke plays his father, and of course you have Claes who plays the brother FJÖLNIR, and this murder essentially spirals him out on this route of vengeance throughout his entire life. And by the time he grows up into Alexander Skarsgård, he's on this tale of revenge that he is so determined to accomplish by the end of this film. Along the journey, he finds Anya Taylor-Joy's character, who essentially joins forces, and they form sort of a bond and a relationship in order for him to be able to accomplish this thing where he wants to save his mother, avenge his father, and kill FJÖLNIR. And one of the major themes of this movie is fate and revenge, and just the overall destiny of this character. I found that as one of the more interesting aspects of this film. So at the beginning of the movie, like I said, you see FJÖLNIR kill his father, and so when you catch back up with him once he's an adult, he's a part of this group that kind of does the same thing to this village, where they kind of pillage everything. They kill a bunch of innocent people, men, women, and children, and it's just a very brutal scene. The opening part of him being an adult is just very intense and very just violent and very similar to what we just saw in this opening first sequence of him as a kid. And it's very striking to see the comparison of how when you are following this fate and this path of revenge, how you can also turn into the thing that you're seeking out to destroy. And I think that is the major theme and main thematic element of this movie that I found very compelling. This character, Alexander Skarsgård, who plays this character, is a very intense person. This movie is very intense in terms of its tone, in terms of how dark it is, and it's not afraid to do a fart joke here and there at the beginning of this movie, but it is a very tense film, and he plays it so incredibly well because he's one of those characters that you kind of see him going down this darker path that at first you're rooting for him, but as you learn different things and as you learn the complexities of the different characters, especially FJÖLNIR's character, you kind of begin to gain empathy for more than just Alexander Skarsgård's character, and he plays it so well, and by the end of the film you just kind of feel so bad for everybody in this situation. One of the biggest reveals in this movie lies with Nicole Kidman's character, which she was kind of in the background for the first majority, like half of this movie, and I was like, okay, why do you get such a big actress for such a small role? And I'd say the same thing about Willem Dafoe's character. And at the beginning he has this amazing sequence where the father and son are kind of on this journey of him becoming a man, and they're in this like trip of a scene that is really incredible. But that's why you get Willem Dafoe for that sort of thing, for that one scene. And Nicole Kidman has a very similar thing where she has one scene where it's like, that is why you get Nicole Kidman for this role. And she honestly kind of scared me. So apparently she was the one who instigated the murder of her own husband. She went to FJÖLNIR and kind of begged him to take out Ethan Hawke's character because he was an abusive person. He was the type of person who goes out. She was a peasant, she was a slave, and he kind of took her in and kind of chose her to be his queen, and there was no choice in that. There's no love in that. And although you kind of see it from the kid's perspective at the beginning of this movie with Alexander Skarsgård's character as a kid, you see from his eyes, but from her eyes it was very different. You see her being held by FJÖLNIR at the beginning of the movie, like screaming and crying, but no, that was actually her laughing and him kind of throwing her on his shoulders and kind of celebrating. And it's such a dark twist in this movie because everything from that point on is just completely different, recontextualizes everything in the film, because his entire journey for both revenge and both to save his mother and to kill FJÖLNIR has kind of turned up on its head, and it's kind of ruined because she does not want him to do that. And like I said, Nicole Kidman freaked me out in this scene. She starts to get really close to him, and of course he is her son, and she even kisses him at one point. It's very uncomfortable, very just disturbing, and she is just such a messed up character. character, and she even seeks out to even kill him at certain points in the last half of this movie, and it is just so intense. And like I said, from that point on, the whole story is recontextualized. Skarsgård's character kind of runs off, and he says goodbye to Anya Taylor-Joy's character. He's like, okay, I'm gonna run off and kind of gather my thoughts, because what in the world just happened in that little hut? It completely ruined his perception of what he wanted to do. If anything, it made him want even more to kill Fjölnir. And I will say I absolutely love the relationship between Alexander Skarsgård and Anya Taylor-Joy's character, because she's the one that kind of tries to ground him back down to reality, because he has two choices. He can either follow his fate in vengeance and in violence, or he can choose peace and a more loving route with her and running off with her, which he even decides to do at one point. She is threatened by Fjölnir at one point in the movie. He kind of comes in and says, you can take me instead as long as you let her live, and they kind of escape and run off to each other, and they are on this boat, they're escaping, and she says this one thing. She says that she is pregnant with his twins, essentially. He kind of sees this familial tree with this, crazy vision that he saw at the beginning of the movie when he was a kid, with this tree and this family line that is being created, and he sees her with two kids, and that just fuels him even more, because just before that, in their escape, he essentially killed Fjölnir's son, his first son. And that guy was terrible, by the way. I hated his character, but as soon as he killed him, I was like, that is going to cause so many problems for him, because you just basically created what you became. You made this person so fueled with vengeance, and now Fjölnir is just as angry and just as spiteful as Skarsgård's character has been throughout this entire film, because he killed his firstborn son. And so out of fear and out of just terror of this situation, he decides to go back and take out Fjölnir, because if he believes that if he does not do that, then he'll always seek out to kill Anya Taylor-Joy and to possibly kill these two children and to kill him himself. And so it kind of leads up to this final battle, this duel behind a volcano setting. Just before that, Skarsgård's character actually does kill his mom and the son that she had with Fjölnir, and that is just such a dark scene. Like I said, this movie is dark and messed up. It reminded me in some ways of The Nightingale. It's not as dark as Nightingale. I honestly really struggled to watch the first 30 minutes of The Nightingale. It's such a very tense movie, but it did remind me of that, tonally, and just how dark it is. And that scene where he kills his mother and the son jumps and starts stabbing him in the back, and he has to kill this little kid. Like I said, he went down this darker path, and this is where you start to have more sympathy and more empathy for Fjölnir's character, and kind of feel just sad that you felt so empathetic for Alexander Skarsgård's character this entire time. Your entire perception of him as a character has kind of dwindled to a point where you're kind of no longer rooting for him. You're kind of not rooting for any of these characters, because they're choosing this path of violence. And like I said, that theme of fate and destiny and becoming the thing that you hate, that is what he does. He even says at one point that no, he's going to choose both the violence and the love, but no, he just straight up chose the violence, and it's very hard to watch him go down this path. And I will say, on top of all this, the action sequences in this movie are absolutely incredible. Like I said, the filmmaking on display from Robert Eggers is at the top of his game. They threw a lot of money into this movie. You can see every penny of it on the screen, and this fight by the volcano with him just completely naked for some reason is so intense and so just visually incredible to watch, and how intense it is, and how this duel kind of leads to a point where you think that Skarsgård's character is down and beaten, but he uses the last bit of strength that he has left to completely decapitate him. And this shot was incredible. He decapitates Fjölnir, and his head goes flying off, and he's holding the sword up, and you don't realize until his corpse lets go of the sword, and you see the sword is stuck through Skarsgård's chest, and then he falls to his knees, and he also dies. And you see the Valkyrie, ride down on its horse and kind of picks him up and brings him to Valhalla. It is such a beautifully striking movie. The cinematography, like I said, the action, the visuals of this film, and the direction are just at the top of this game. And the thematic elements with this character and his downfall and his spiral in terms of vengeance is such an interesting take of a revenge tale, because it's not really about, it's revenge, the good guy's going to go and beat the bad guy. It's a lot more complex than that. There's so much sympathy and empathy you have for all these characters involved, and a lot of hatred and spitefulness that you feel towards the characters that you thought you're supposed to like in Skarsgård's character and Nicole Kidman's character. There's so many different aspects. There's even a lot of, anger in Skarsgård's character, because, he just straight up leaves Anya Taylor-Joy's character, and she has an amazing speech on the ship as he's swimming off, and she's just furious furious at this decision, and she makes an incredible speech on this boat. That's, again, so many heavyweight actors in this film giving it their all. The cast in this film is amazing. The direction is amazing. I honestly struggle to find any major flaws in this film. There's times in the middle, it's the second act where you see these characters, Skarsgård and Anya Taylor-Joy are in this encampment. They're pretending to be the peasants of, Fjölnir's entire encampment that he has created on this, sole place. And you think that some of these scenes feel like they have no purpose, and you think, like, there's even a scene where Skarsgård is competing in this game to get this ball to hit a stick or whatever this game is, and you're like, okay, are we wasting time here? I know this movie is like 2 hours and 15 minutes. Did it need to be 2 hours and 15 minutes? Honestly, no. You could easily cut out this, scene where he's throwing the ball around, but it has one significant moment where he saves Nicole Kidman's son, because at that point he still believes that he needs to save her and that he needs to save everything that she loves, including this little boy. And of course, that whole thing flips up on its head towards the end of this movie. But even still, these little moments, these little, vignettes and these little sequences in this movie are still very enjoyable, despite, you can easily take that storyline out and it wouldn't change too much of the overall arcing story. So I guess that's some flaw, but really I enjoyed pretty much this entire film from beginning to end. This is definitely one of my favorites of the year. I'd highly recommend you guys check this one out. Like I said, they threw a lot of money into this, so I'm hoping this movie makes a profit, but I'm not sure if it's going to do that. And if you love original cinema, this movie, takes a lot of that Icelandic, cultural Viking type of storyline, but has a very weird, like, action-centric, testosterone-filled, crazy movie that has a lot of thematic elements as well. This is a very original film that I really, really dug. It was very much for me, and I get it if it's not the type of movie for you, but I am one to say that I loved this film. So what did you guys think of The Northman? If you guys saw it, comment down below your thoughts on this film. I'm curious to hear all of your guys' thoughts. And if you enjoyed this video, I have more reviews up for, like, Everything Everywhere All at Once, The Batman, a bunch of different things that I've been reviewing throughout this year, and I will have a series review once Moon Knight wraps up in 2 weeks here, and a bunch of other reviews, and try to watch Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent later in the next couple of days, so look out for a review of that as well. So thanks everybody for watching this video. Comment down below, subscribe, leave a like, do all those things, and I hope to see you all in my next one.